let me, before there is a review, let me ask this question. If there are any questions, things that you have talked about or about anything that has come across your mind or your pathway during the course of this week, please let us know and raise that question now, okay? I'm sure something has happened during the course of the week that you had questions about. Now is your time.
This is Vermel. I have a question. We ended last week talking about being at the table, and I was hoping that we could define what it means to be at the table, what we're conveying at the table.
The whole concept of being at the table is speaking metaphorically, is speaking about being in a place where decisions are made. If you can picture in your mind a corporate boardroom, it is around that corporate table that decisions are made for that corporation and how they're going to proceed in the coming days, months, and years. And that's the metaphor that is being used at this point, because when Jesus sat at the table with the disciples, what did they do? What they did, they embodied the end of a spiritual era and the beginning of a new one. The end of that spiritual era was the end of the era that included their exodus out of Egypt, and it also included a move from the wilderness to the land that was promised, or to the consciousness that had been promised. And because from the time that we look at Abraham up to the time of Jesus, what do we see? We see a constant and consistent travel through wilderness. We see a push and pull as it relates to being in this earth consciousness and the spiritual consciousness. Then when at the advent of Jesus, what do we see? We see that things have deteriorated to the point where the priests are no longer the voices of our Creator. The priest has become the voice for themselves. And everything that they were doing was to make sure that the priesthood survived no matter what, even to the point of being in collusion with the Roman government in order to subjugate the Hebrews. So when Jesus came, Jesus made it very, very clear that it's time to come out of the wilderness. And he did that with his wilderness experience. And I'm not talking about a physical wilderness experience. I'm talking about an experience in the place of darkness within yourself. And what Jesus was saying when he journeyed with the disciples, what he was saying to them is, you have to make a decision for yourself. You have to travel to that dark place in you, and you have to decide whether you're going to trust your Creator or whether you're going to go after the kingdoms of this earth, the riches, the wealth of this earth, the prestige. That's a decision you have to make. And we see that decision had been made when Jesus raised the question asking the disciples, will you turn away from me also? And Peter said, where will we go? We left everything behind. In other words, there's nothing to go back to. So with that statement, what Peter was saying is that, okay, the era is ended, and now we are learning how to come out of this wilderness by the teachings of Jesus. And around that table, it brought to an end the wilderness experience. So now if anyone is in that wilderness, they are there by choice. There is an opportunity to come out of the wilderness. And from the time that Jesus sat around that table, the decisions that have been made spiritually have been made by people who don't care about spiritual experiences. They care more about personal wealth. They care more about personal gain. So here we are at a period when the earth is on its last leg. It is about to die. Physically, in terms of climate change, it is about to die physically in terms of the consciousness of mankind. So here we are, a group of people who have taken it upon ourselves to desire to save this earth and mankind. And in doing so, our quest is to teach mankind how to be human. Because when we become human, we become as Jesus was when he walked this earth. And right now, what we have seen in the past is that we have been burdened with religious antics that were learned in Egypt or learned in the wilderness. And the priesthood has continued to do what it has done since Jesus, before Jesus came. The earth had been shut up before Jesus came. There was no word from the Lord before Jesus came. And now there hasn't been a word from the Lord seemingly since Jesus left. So here we are. We have the burden of change on our shoulders by choice. We have chosen to be chosen to carry the burden for humanity. And now when we talk about sitting at the table, we are talking about being in a spiritual place where decisions are made that's going to catapult mankind to a place of humanness, going to transform the heart of humanity so that it can have the heart of its creator and begin to see each other as human, which is Elohim having a spiritual experience. Does that help you, Pramil, or anyone else for that matter?
Yes, it really did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any questions or comments about that? Then I would take it that that's very clear. Are there any other questions? If there are no other questions, then Ron, would you do the review? We go from there, please, or enter what you're going to, open up what you're going to talk about.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. On Monday night, we discussed Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, and we looked at where Jesus talked about entering the narrow gate, and we talked about what that meant as far as getting rid of any baggage and coming into a place of meditation and understanding. I guess really kind of echoing what Pastor just said, making the choice of who you want and what is important to you. And that narrow gate, meaning that nothing can come with you. You are the decisions you make take you there, and it is a decision to leave your baggage. And when I say baggage, I don't necessarily just mean the physical stuff or your status and your importance of who you become in the earth, but the mental challenges that you've had, the battles and wrestling you've had as to who you are and what the scriptures are saying, and coming to an understanding of who Elohim is in your relationship and your belief and trust in the Creator and moving forward. So that's what that's discussing. And if someone else has further enlightenment, something I may be leaving behind, because I'm usually kind of bad at the recapping stuff. If someone else has some more insight, please feel free. Okay.
Ron, did you say mental battle?
Say that again.
Did you say mental battles?
Yes, mental battles. We battle all the time internally as to how far we want to take this. You know, as even when we say to ourselves, I'm all in, I want to know who I am or know who Elohim is. There's things that challenge us, that allow us to either stay where we are or to go deeper in our understanding, go further in our understanding. So we wrestle all the time. That's part of that friction is a good thing, or it should be, if it moves us in the direction of clarity or in further discovering who we are. So yes, it is a battle that we continuously have.
Ron, this is Vermel. Could you
Yes,
say what
ma'am.
scripture again you went over on Monday?
It was Matthew chapter 7, and it was verses 13 and 14.
Thank you.
Okay. And like I said, if there's someone else that can look at that, and there was a lot of input. It was a good discussion. If Barbara, Sheldon, or Audrey, whoever, I'm trying to remember who all had input that night, Pastor, anybody can further help me explain what we talked about and what we saw there. Okay. What I did, though, from that, and this lesson, as today is in the last couple of days that we talked, I guess, is along those same lines where we kind of talk things out. One of the things I saw as I first just kept reading in Matthew is I noticed that Jesus did a lot of healing, and that means something. And it wasn't just to men, it wasn't just to women. There is I cannot see all that he's doing here. I think I got a little insight into it, but I want to talk about it a little bit. And I landed on chapter 9 of Matthew, and I want to read a couple of verses here for you. And then I want to kind of give a background of what I see there, and then we can talk about it a bit. Starting with verse 1 in chapter 9 of Matthew, it said, getting into the boat, he crossed over, let's talking about Jesus, and came to his own city. And behold, they were bringing to him a paralytic, lying on a bed, and Jesus, seeing their faith, said to the paraplegic, take courage, my son, your sins are forgiven. And behold, some of the scribes said to themselves, this fellow blasphemies. And Jesus, knowing their hearts, said, what are you thinking evil in your hearts? Okay. And I read all the way, we can talk all the way through verse 8 with this. But the thing was, for me, is understanding a couple of things. We talked about wholeness the other day as versus healing, and it would be better to made whole. But I see healing a little bit different too. Healing is talking about to refresh, to repair something. The root of it talks about to sink down or to relax and just totally let go. And I want to hit that just for a minute. And of course, when we looked at making whole, we talked about.
Ron, would you repeat that again, please?
Okay, hold on. Okay. Healing is talking about to refresh, to make a repair. And then the root of it talks about to relax or to sink down, to just let go, to totally let go. That's healing. And the other day when we got into, we were talking about wholeness, we looked at it from a different perspective. Wholeness is talking about. I'm trying to flip my notes here, y'all. Bear with me. Wholeness is talking about creating space to receive something. Wholeness is talking also about making room, being just open yourself up to be consumed by something. And it even speaks of leads to completeness, being one with the universe. So you look at these things, and I wanted to talk about the healing. Why is he doing so much healing? And in a couple of those instances, it does talk about making whole, and I think there was a poor translation. Okay, I want to read something for you here. Any questions so far? Because I want to go somewhere with this, and I want to.
I have a comment.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Hey, when you're talking about being made whole, is that you're creating a space, and then when you something about healing. And what was the term you used about healing?
Healing is to be refreshed, to repair, or to sink down, or to relax, to totally let go.
You know what I see? I see meditation. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
Because that's what I'm seeing. Okay, I'm done for right now.
Okay. But as the thing that jumps out here is that, as always, what we're seeing is sin, just like most things in the scriptures, is not what we've been taught that it is. And it doesn't mean what we think it means. I'm going to give you a couple of words here, a couple of scriptures here to look at sin. Bear with me. The first one is in 1 Kings, and you don't have to flip there. I'm just going to read this right quick and give you some examples, okay? The first one is in 1 Kings chapter 1, verses 20 and 21. And just listen to this. You don't have to flip there. And this is Bathsheba talking to David. David is on his deathbed. The king is about to die. And she says, "And as for you now, my lord the king, the eyes of all of Israel are upon you, to tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise, it will come about as soon as my lord the king sleeps with his fathers, then I and my son Solomon will be considered offenders." We will be considered offenders. The word for offenders is sin. It is the same word for sin. Another example. Another example is in Judges. This is in Judges, and I won't give you a whole background on this because I'm just wanting to pull something out. I want you to see something. Judges chapter 20, verses 15 and 16. It says, "And from the cities on that day, the sons of Benjamin were numbered 26,000 who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Galbraith, who were 700 choice men. Out of all these people, 700 choice men were left-handed, and each one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss." That sin the not miss is the same for sin. So you look at this, and it gives you two examples of what the word sin means, and neither the one about the hitting the hair and not miss, that's more in line of what we know, where it means to not miss the target. But the one for Bathsheba, the one for Bathsheba, I think kind of throws us off. But I want to hear some insight from you guys as to what you see here, because Jesus said your sins are forgiven to you, and so what does that mean? It makes it sound like this kid or this person had done something wrong. So I want to talk about that just a minute. Anyone, please, questions or comments?
Ron, this is Barbara. I have a question. Part of what sin has been described as missing the mark, but then I had it was challenging for me to relate what you just said about the ones who could throw a stone and not miss, throw a stone at a hare, not miss. That was called sin. So missing the mark versus. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said it wrong, Barbara. They could throw a stone and not sin.
Oh, okay. So they don't miss the mark. In other words, I got you.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. My bad. Thank you for your question. That's very important. That's very important that correction is made. I misspoke. Okay. I'll ask a question. Then we have no other question or comment. But let me say just one last thing. I was reading another article that said the word sin comes from the word in Aramaic for archer, one who shoots a bow. Because when they shoot the bow and they would miss the target, the word would be called out, sin. So it would let you know that you did not hit the mark. Okay. So any questions or comments on this? And I'm trying to get to answer the question, why would Jesus make this statement?
Ron.
Yes, sir.
I think I see something.
Okay.
If we're talking about sin, missing the target, right? If it comes from the word the archer, then when the archer missed the target, it doesn't mean he didn't hit the bullseye. It means he missed the whole target. So, because when we think about a target, we think about a bullseye, and you missed the bullseye. But no, you missed the whole thing. And if you miss the whole target, then that arrow can land any place and injure someone else or something else. So when I look at that, especially from the Old Testament of sin, it speaks both to the idea of incurring guilt as well as missing the goal. So if it speaks of, it also speaks of the penalty too that's incurred for missing the goal. So if I miss the target on purpose, then I have created the opportunity for a penalty because I did it on purpose, without regard to who could be injured by my unripened intent. The other, and that's the penalty phase of it. However, if I miss it while I am making every effort to hit the target, then I incur guilt because I've hurt someone, and that guilt is not given to me. I incur it. It's something that I feel sorry for. So at that point, when Jesus says to the man, your sins are forgiven, what I'm seeing here is Jesus saying, you have been suffering under penalty long enough. Forgive yourself. You have been in this place of of motionless. You have not been able to move beyond this point of being a paraplegic or being paralyzed. So it's time for you to move on and free yourself from the guilt. Now, if he had done it on purpose, then he would still need that forgiveness. But he could, if he did not get that forgiveness, he could incur a penalty from the universe itself. Does that make sense, or is that clear?
It does make sense. Let me add. Yes, ma'am.
Based on the
Go ahead.
question, good morning, this is Kathy. Based on what
Hey,
Pastor just said, how does that tie in with the scenario that you read with the scripture with David and Bathsheba?
Yeah, that's what.
Because I'm not quite clear on that one yet. I want to know how that ties in.
Okay, I see it. That's what helped me see what I see, I think. David had sinned with Bathsheba, had taken Uriah's wife, and David had Uriah killed. So David purposely missed the mark because he purposely had Uriah killed. And what Bathsheba is saying is, because of your past indiscretions, if you don't name someone to take your seat or to sit in the seat of authority before you close your eyes, you have invited a penalty for all of us because of your sin, because you missed the mark on purpose. Can you see that, Catherine?
Yes, thank you. That makes sense now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Okay.
Good morning. This is Audrey. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Audrey. How are you? Yes, ma'am.
I'm good. When we first read that scripture about Jesus getting in the boat and crossing over, that just really resonated with me. And I think it has a lot to do with how you not miss the mark. I think getting in the boat, crossing over water, I think it has a lot to do with going back to Evelyn, what Evelyn said about meditation. It's having an intention to do something that helps you cross over or come into another state of mind. Anyway, I can't explain it more than that, but can you elaborate on that thing about getting in the boat and crossing over? Anybody?
Based on what you said, Audrey, why is it that water is peaceful? Why is it that you can be agitated and you can sit close to a brook and listen at the water and be calmed? Why is it that you can listen to raindrops and go to sleep? Why? Is it because there is an affinity for each other? Because we are this body, the composition of this body is mostly water, and is speaking to each other in a calm manner? If that's the case, then is it that Jesus speaking, getting in the boat, was tantamount to just being over the water, being in concert with the source of life itself, because life in the earth cannot be sustained without water. Being in concert with the life itself and bringing balance not only to those around him, but to himself as well. And I know there are those of you who say, well, what about the trees and stuff? The reason you can walk through the grass and you're calm is because you created it. You brought that into existence. The forest, you brought that into existence. but you did not bring the water into existence. Water is who you are in this body, and it is your spirit.
Isn't water also representative of spirit?
That's where I'm going.
Okay.
And it's your spirit that is intermingled with that water. There is no life without breath, which is spirit. There is no life in the physical realm without water. So what spirit is to the spiritual realm, water is to this place. And it doesn't calm your soul. It is your soul that calms your mind when you are in concert with the water, or when you are one with the water itself, because you become one with life in this earth realm. Does that help, Audrey? Does that make sense to you?
So when you become one with the water, which represents spirit, you cross over into like a new frame of mind, a new intention.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Because when you think about it, when you're listening at that water flow or brook or the ocean with the waves coming in, you close your eyes and you lose yourself. All you focus on is the sound and the feel, as opposed to having all these things float through your mind. If you compare it with making an attempt to meditate in your home or in the midst of a crowd, you have to clear your mind. But if you're at that ocean and close your eyes, it clears your mind. The sound of it clears your mind. Can you see that? Or has anyone had that experience? I know I have.
Yes, I have.
Pastor, can I add something to this? And it's kind of a question, because what you just said answered the part I could not see. And I want you to go back and tell me if I'm wrong first place, and then kind of tie into what you said. I looked at that a bit differently. I'm glad that Audrey asked the question. What I saw was he's casting out demons, he's healing on one side, and then he gets in and crosses over the other side. And what I saw was we say all the time that time speeds up, and we have a direct effect on that. And what I saw was him being the Word of God, being the thing that changes the consciousness of the darkness of the earth, of the confusionness in the earth, and it had everything to do with him crossing over. So he leaves a portion that is darkened that he sheds light on, and he enters into another portion that has a different type of illness, but something that also requires the Word of God to enlighten. So if earth, the ground being consciousness, and I'm adding what you said to what Audrey's question, am I seeing that right? Is that, because I looked at the land portion of it and the people on the land and not the water is what I saw. But listening to what you just added kind of pulled it all together to me and made sense. Do you see what I'm saying? Or is that leading you off the mark a little bit? You there, Pastor?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was talking. Would you repeat that again? My mind was pulled to another part of that verse as you were talking. I'm sorry.
No, I just say I looked at it differently than what you and Audrey were looking at it. I looked at the crossing over as him bridging two worlds together, bridging the confusion of the consciousness of man, bringing enlightenment to it. He enlightens on one side, and then he goes over and sheds light on the other side. And those were two different things that he addressed. So I didn't see it from the water perspective. I looked at it from the land and the consciousness of man being touched and enlightened or bringing some understanding to their confusion. So I'll just saying, am I on the right track? Because I think what you said there kind of tied those two things together.
Yes. You're right. It does. As a matter of fact, they're the same thing, just different words, different ways of explaining it. Because the body itself represents two things. It represents the physical realm, which is what the body is constituted of, and order, which is the life form for the physicality, and it connects both of them together. Why? Because in order for this physical man, this physical body rather, to function, it has to have the spirit, which is breath. So it's the same thing.
Okay.
And I saw something else, by the way. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, I want to back up. As I said from the onset of this, I don't have a lot of answers. I have questions, and I want to make sure I understand what we're saying here. Okay.
Let me speak to that.
Okay.
Not be concerned about whether or not we have the answers before we start talking. And the reason I say that is because it is my belief that we have been brought to a place where we don't get the understanding unless we talk it out. And what am I saying? I am saying that with the way we are being led in our teaching, it is saying that the hand needs the foot as much as the foot needs the hand. It is tying us inextricably together as one unit, because without the input from those around us, we don't get a clearer picture, which means that we are, in essence, bringing humanity to the place of oneness, and we are beginning to experience what it means to be one yet many. However, if we make our notes and we have the understandings before we get to this point, it is as though we are in front of a classroom teaching and we get questions from those around us and input. However, when we don't have the answers, we get it from each other, and that way we become one yet many. Does that make sense to you, sir?
Yes, sir, it does.
And that's the clarity I want us to have, because I don't want us to feel off balance because we don't have the answers. The things that I have said to you this morning, I had no vision or clue of until the questions was raised and the statements were made. And I'm no different than you, and you're no different than me. We are one, and that's how we function. Okay, you can continue, Ron. Thank you for the opportunity.
The only thing I want to say and look at here is I don't see sin as being intentional. I think there's a difference. I want to talk about that. There are two other words in the scriptures that talks about intent and doing something intentional. If you ever, and I didn't have time to do a lot of research on these, but the word Avon, A-V-O-N, and Pesha, P-E-S-H-A, they talking about willfully doing something that you know is wrong. You've experienced this thing, and you like it, or you got the enjoyment from it, and you got the pleasure, or the experience is something that you enjoy, so you continue to do it. I see sin as something a little different. I see sin, and as Neil Douglas Clark in his explanation talks about, to miss the mark or to fall into error, as well as to have a failure or a mistake. The one thing I see with sin is it talks about an opportunity to go back to the beginning. If the archer misses the mark, he gets chance to do it over again. He gets chance, as Audrey said, to meditate to see where he made his error. But he gets chance to start over. With the question that wasn't Barbara that asked. Kathy asked, where she talked about Bathsheba. I tell you what, he sins. He sins in what he does to Uriah. And y'all help me with this if I'm looking at this wrong. He sins in what he does to Uriah, and he goes to God when God, who was it, Nathan, that God sent to talk to him, and he repents for it. He repents for it. I think more in line of what she is talking about is Solomon. She is saying, if you don't do this, what becomes of me and Solomon? It's saying we will be the offenders. We will be the guilt. We will be the ones who bear the blame. Bear the blame for what? The confusion in the kingdom. The rest of it goes into what Pastor's explanation was, but the going. I think the part that she is talking about specifically is saying that I don't want my birth of my son to be seen as a mistake. It is not. He is not the seed of what is wrong in Israel.
Or I don't want my son to be seen as someone who's trying to wrest the throne away from your other children.
Yes.
Which is the guilt that's incurred from having killed Uriah. So if you make it right with the people, you've already made it right between you and the Creator. Now make it right with the people.
There you
go.
Yes.
So that's
yes.
So when he makes it right with the people, that frees him of the guilt that he's been living with, even though he has made it right with God.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to ask another question now.
Okay.
So if there is the mistake, right?
Yes, sir.
And the archer made that mistake and chooses not to correct it, or just simply refuses. I quit. I'm not gonna correct it. Does that not incur a penalty, not to destroy, but a penalty to bring him to a place where he will correct it?
Yes, sir. Indeed.
So in that regard, that's how I see the sin. He refused to do it, and I see the guilt as part of the penalty that pushes him to a place where he chooses to correct it. And if he does not choose to correct it, then he ends up in the state of chaos. And that is the state that the world is in right now, a state of chaos, because there has been a refusal to correct the errors that has been made, and the missing of the mark has been seen or accepted as that's just the way things are, as opposed to being seen as what it is, an affront to our Creator and our purpose for being created.
Yes, sir. Very well said. The example I thought of is pretty much the same thing. I see a ship that is leaving Europe, and that ship sets out to visit Cuba, the small island of Cuba, and his calculation is off by 1 degree. So by the time he sets out and says, it has been, by this time we should have reached Cuba, and he reaches that point, and he's in the middle of the ocean and sees no land, that 1 degree is far off now. But if he ends up somewhere else and never again sets his compass on going to Cuba, then that is the, if you will, to me, lack of a better term, as what you just explained, Pastor, that's when it becomes evil. I know that I'm off, and I'm intentionally, because there is something else that I've gained here, or that I see here, or that I can take advantage of, or maybe I just don't want to make the correction. It's no different than I sin against you, or I do something and I refuse to apologize.
It's much more than that. The example you gave about the ship, right?
Yeah.
If that ship is off by 1 degree, then by the time it gets to a place where there is land, it's off more, it's way off target, okay? Now, so what happened? I'm headed to Cuba. Well, actually, I'm headed to India. And I get to this place that's called now, of course, the Americas. And rather than correct my course and sail towards India, I make excuses for where I am. I refuse to admit that I was off course. So what do? When I run into these people, I call them Indians because I was on my way to India. So I'm going to make this be what I want it to be as opposed to what it really is. That's the sin that is revealing the unrightness in the attitude of the one who did that. And because of that unrightness, the penalty comes. What is the penalty? The penalty that comes is not seen at that very moment. The penalty that comes is beginning to be seen now, where retribution by the universe is being sought because that one error that was refused to be corrected has resulted in the whole world being off a kilter. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Additionally, the paralytic.
Say again?
Additionally, the paralytic man reminds us of a spiritual paralysis. What paralysis is, you can't move. You can't go forward, you can't go backwards because you can't move. The nerves are such that they don't communicate anymore to the muscles from the brain to move. And that's what's happened now as well from a spiritual perspective. People say one thing and call it, as you said, he called them Indians when he was off course. Well, people are saying anything now and calling it what they want it to be. And there are so many people now trapped and paralyzed and can't move, even though they know they've missed the mark. They choose not to move toward the mark, toward righteousness, toward peace, whatever the mark is. So the paralytic man is us now as well.
Summed up beautifully, because paralysis, as you said, as we studied, was that last week before last, we talked about the ones that had the other disease, I can't think of it now, leprosy. This has everything to do with the nervous system. As you said, the brain and the muscles cannot speak to the muscles, so you're stuck. You can't go backwards or forward. So there is no rhythm. There is no oneness with the universe. There is no opportunity to be whole or to be complete. So when you look at it from a spiritual perspective, I think y'all just summed it up beautifully.
So what happens?
What happens? Go ahead.
Happens to something that becomes stagnant. Stagnant water stinks because everything in it dies. A stagnant body deteriorates. If we take that and make application to it, as we have been talking about, the world itself, the world is in a state of decay. Everything is falling apart. Why? Because it has been in a paralytic state since Jesus introduced a way to move beyond that. And it says, it raises a question in that verse. It says, when Jesus said, I have forgiven, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says, the scribes said within themselves, who blaspheme, right?
Yes.
And Jesus said, why are you thinking unripeness? Why are you having unripened thoughts? And is it easier to say your sins are forgiven or arise and walk? But ye know that the sons of man will have power on earth to forgive sins. What he's saying is that even when the healing comes, even when the paralytic is free from his paralysis, there are going to be those who are going to criticize what you are doing based on what they are accustomed to. And what they're accustomed to is blaming someone else for everything that they've done. The reason it is wrong to have African history taught in school or CRT taught in school is because it's going to cause white kids to hate themselves, notwithstanding the reality that you've done everything you could to cause the African to hate himself. That's a desire to remain a paraplegic. That's where we are right now. And every time we hear anything about white supremacy, every time we hear anything about a Biden refusal to set aside the filibuster for voting rights, that's the scribes speaking. They want to remain in a paralytic state, not understanding because of their evilness. They cannot understand that this paralytic state that you are in is destroying you and everything else. And until the vision of healing, of deliverance has taken place, this will continue, and the earth as a result will be destroyed. That is the reason that had to be an injection into earth of a spiritual desire to bring balance to this place, so that this paramount destruction could be stalled or changed, or it could be brought to a place where it cannot it cannot be destroyed because of the righteousness that's in this earth. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And that's where we are at this very moment. I do believe that what we're being shown here today is that the sin of missing the mark and refusing to correct it even though you missed the mark, what did you do? You decided that you were going to take the words of Jesus, the prophets, and what you were going to do is you, instead of calling them Indians, what you have done is call them Christians. And in calling them Christians, what you have done is made every other group wrong except you. Everyone who seeks spirituality differently than what you say it is, you seek to destroy them unless they bow to what you desire them to bow to. And right now what is happening is the foundation of this false spirituality is crumbling. The church that is crumbling, and as a result of that, we are seeing the crumbling of the earth itself. And all because that someone chose to call the native people Indians as opposed to allowing them to identify to who they are based upon their culture, based upon who they see themselves as being. How and what am I saying? They see themselves as being one with the earth, and you see them as being your property, and the earth is your property. That's the difference. Everywhere you go, what you have seen is that the earth is yours for the taking, because those who are one with the earth feel as though they are one with you as well, but you are not experiencing the same thing. So the question is, why is it that the Creator would allow something like this to take place? In order for man to become Elohim in this physical body, it has to understand how to be human. And the only way that this human can be created by the Elohim that is in this physical body is not only by the Elohim becoming an example of what humanness is, but also in order for it to get to that place of what humanness is, it has to go through some things. It has to be put in a crucible. Otherwise, it will not correct the mistakes. It will not correct the sin. It will not ripen the wisdom. It will stay where it is. And if it does not ripen the wisdom, then the Creator starts all over again, as in the Cro-Magnon man, etc., those people who are predated us. Here we are at a place now where we are able to avoid that destruction. Why? Because right now we are embracing the reality that everything that has transpired in this earth is for the purpose of that entity called Adam to learn how to live in concert with its body, with the physicality that's in its midst. And those who are unable to do that, it is incumbent upon Moses to be a guard to those that he left in the wilderness. It is incumbent upon those who recognize that Elohim is having a physical experience to become the God to those who don't know any better. And those who don't know any better are the same ones who has developed something called the church and Christianity that has kept the world in bondage and caused it to deteriorate. And as a result of that, it has convinced the people that it robbed of their identity to believe the same things that it believes. Therefore, there has to be in the earth the righteousness of Elohim in order to correct the mistake. And in correcting the mistake, it cannot be corrected by looking at the African as being a victim of Christianity or the Caucasian as being the slave owner and using Christianity as his bondage. It has to be seen as a theology or a doctrine that runs through the African community as well as the Caucasian community, and that thread that is common to all is that thread of the misunderstanding of Christianity. And in order for that thread to be woven into the tapestry of a rug, it has to do something that we have not done, and that is to see not the skin, not the Caucasian, not the African, but see the concept and correct the concept. And when we correct the concept at its root, then we begin to correct the concept, then the fruit begins to change. What am I saying? What is the root of the concept? It is not the individual Columbus. That's not the root of the concept. The root of the concept is a foreign belief in something that doesn't exist, that Christianity doesn't exist, the doctrine does not exist because they are foreign to the scriptures. So when we deal with it at the root, we must deal with it with Caucasians because they are the root of it, not individual people, but the concepts that they project. We have to deal with it at that root. And the reason we have to deal with it at that root is because that Caucasian feminine energy must birth into this earth a renewal of a desire to change, a renewal of a desire to correct the mistakes of the past and to become one with its creator and recognize that the one that it enslaved is now its God. It is his deliverer. It is the deliverer of the earth. It is the power source of everything that exists. It is the life source of everything that exists. It is the energy that keeps the engine of the world running. And the reason that the nations have become wealthy as they have is because of the ingenuity of the Elohim that has been in their midst, taking advantage of it and used it for their own means. And it is now time for Elohim to stand tall and understand and teach them to understand that the physicality of the earth is to be shared for the benefit of sustaining the body in the earth for the purpose of Elohim existing in the earth realm. Does that make sense to you guys, or are there any words or questions about what I just said? I think I'm saying it right. Help me.
It makes sense.
I know you guys are processing, and that's a good
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you what I heard it and what you just said. What the thing? My question was going to be from verse 6. Do we have the authority to forgive sin? And you just answered that, but I want to, because when you ask, if I were to ask that question, the first feeling that we have is of that of inadequacy. But as you just explained, and I'm not trying to put words in mouth, but what I heard is sin. It is also, not only does it miss the mark, it is also the avenue to restoration. So that opportunity to start over, that opportunity, again, forgive means to restore or take to an original state or allow something to return. All of these terms, it tells us that to look at sin, it is not a negative thing. And if there were not for those in the earth who are trying to gain as much understanding and being one with the universe and being one with the Creator, then these things will not take place and the destruction would continue. And that's in my words. I know I ain't quite how you said it, but
you're right. You did.
And what I heard.
Go ahead.
And what I heard you say, Ron, based on what Pastor just said, is that sin is not only an avenue for missing the mark, but an avenue for correction.
Yes.
So that at some point we hit the mark.
Yes. It's funny. We spent a lot of time a while back looking at returning to the beginning, and everything we study now takes us there. So as we see, being human does not mean perfection at all. It means, and I keep coming back to that thing Nick put on the board that day, although I get it wrong every time I say it, but set your intent. Set your intent and just be. And when you miss the mark, you have opportunity to return. And if the very rhythm that is in your soul that you feel in the universe allows us to make that return, allows us to take that journey, and you have the authority to do so based on your pursuit of truth.
However, those who are seeking truth have been chosen for a reason to seek that truth. The reason they have been chosen is because without someone in the righteousness in the earth, there will be no return. There will be no repentance. The repentance comes through the ones who finally have come to their senses and begun to see that the reason this has taken so long is because the one who was supposed to bring it to a place of righteousness are the very ones who call themselves victims. Even though they have always functioned on a higher plane than those who enslaved them, they still saw themselves as victims and chose not to be one with the Creator in terms of bringing earth to a place of righteousness. It chose to buy into the mistake. And as long as the African stayed with that mistake, the earth will continue to deteriorate. Now that the African has decided, I am not a victim, I am God. I am not enslaved. I am the deliverer. Nothing is designed to destroy me because I am everything that exists. And because I am everything that exists, I am everything that is needed in this earth to bring deliverance from the bondage of doctrines that are foreign to how we were created. Yes, iron sharpens iron. The iron sharpens iron. The African is human and is becoming human from being free from that mentality of victimhood, which says that it has an animalistic attitude. And when the African says, I am Elohim in this human body, I am who I am for the purpose of I am, it is then that the iron begins to sharpen iron. And the iron that needs to be sharpened is the iron that follows the doctrines that are foreign to the Scriptures. And here we are. Iron does not get sharpened in a second. It takes time to sharpen the iron. How many layers are there in a sword that's less than an inch thick? How many layers of metal is beaten into that sword? How long does it take to turn a sword into a plowshare? What is he saying? That tongue, that sharp tongue, must become a cultivator of truth, a cultivator of wisdom. If it does not break up the earth, then there cannot be a seed planted in the earth. The consciousness must be plowed, not fought. And the consciousness of the Caucasian cannot be changed with a sword. It's changed with a plowshare. When you begin to plow the consciousness of the Caucasian, how you do that? George Floyd, that's how you do it. Aubrey, that's how you do it. You are plowing the consciousness. And now that the consciousness the furrows are there, the consciousness has been plowed. Now what we are doing is planting the seed. Why are we doing this? Because we do understand that the iron that needs sharpened is the concept, the doctrine that the Caucasian brought into this earth, and it was purposely brought into this earth because without creating life, we cannot truly be what we were created to be. And the life that we are created is a life that's lived as a human by those who dehumanize everything in the earth. Are there any questions or comments? Do you see it any other way? Give me some words here, please. Hello?
We're here. We're just processing it. No, we don't see it any other way. Just gaining understanding.
From what you just said, it describes why it's difficult for us to see the need to fight the battle, quote unquote, if you will, in the streets as we once did, because we're past that. We're past the fighting the war with physical swords, and from what you just said, those physical swords are no longer useful. They must be turned into plowshares at this point in time, so that and spiritual plowshares, so that spiritual seed can be planted. There's nothing we can do physically to respond to all of this physical stuff that we see, because the physical is an illusion. And until we understand that, and understand that everything has its root in the spiritual, and we deal with it from the spiritual consciousness, then we're just going to get the same fruit of inactivity, latency, anger, hatred, whatever. The fruit will never change, because we're trying to deal with it from a physical perspective when it's not a physical thing.
We're trying to deal with it based upon how the bondage, the physicality of bondage came into existence. We are trying to use unrighteousness to bring righteousness. That's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. It is incumbent upon us. Let me show you something. I for some time I've had this book that they search inventions and creations in this earth, especially in America. There is nothing in America that was created or that was invented that the African did not invent. Change the word invention. The African did not invent the cotton gin. The African created it. The African created the refrigeration system so that food can be processed and shipped across the country without spoiling. The African, it created the elevator so you don't have to take the stairs. The African created the parachute so you can fall to the ground without killing yourself. All of these things, the African learned how to give blood transfusions. The African created these measures. The medicines of the earth come from the earth of the earth. The Africans are the ones who created medicine from the plants in the earth. If the African felt like this plant was poisonous, that's what it was, poisonous. If you look at the first doctors in this world, they were African. And these decisions about what plants are going to be, poisonous or non-poisonous, are no different than saying, Adam, come and name the animals. In other words, everything in this earth, you have the authority to determine what it is. That's what was being said to that spiritual entity that was destined to become Elohim in physical form. It is incumbent upon you to do this. And we're doing it, and then we got into a state of fear and spiritual bondage. And we begun to be the slaves and the enslavers, because we were enslaving ourselves and everyone else by not being who we are. Now that we are who we are, the reason it's so difficult to talk about who we are and what I am is because that who we are and what I am is infinite. It cannot be explained. It can only be expressed. And the greatest expression of any creator is the love for what's created. It's the love for everything that exists, whether it be an ant on the ground or an animalistic thinking person. The love and kindness is what make us one with the earth and one with each other. That's the destiny that we have in this earth. And when we fulfill this destiny, bringing this animalistic attitude to a place of humanity or humanness, it is then that we start moving toward our destination. Our destination is never reached unless we begin the journey of bringing everyone into the place of their destiny as well. Jesus' destination showed us something. Jesus' destination showed us that you are one with the earth as well as the spiritual. And that is the reason the resurrection took place. That is the reason that he could enter this earth in bodily form. That is the reason that he was able to move in the blinking of an eye from one place to another. That is the reason that he could move through a solid wall. That is the reason we must hold on to who we really are, even though we cannot explain it. We are expressions of it. And when we fail to be an expression of it, then we are in denial about how we were created, who created us, and for what purpose. Thank you.
Questions or comments, y'all?
At the risk of sounding crass, all I've been thinking as you talked is, man, we all need a massive 3H enema. That's what we need. A 3H enema. I mean, things are so blocked up that there is no movement, there is no communication. I apologize in advance. At the risk of being crass, we need a 3H enema for ourselves as mankind and for the earth. And that 3H enema is high, hot, and hell of a lot. We need to break up all of this physical stuff that has stopped us up, that has prevented us from being who we need to be, because we're so busy fighting the pains and the gas and all of that other stuff associated with being stopped up, that we can't see beyond ourselves. We can't see the other person's perspective. We are so introverted in what hurts us and why it's hurting us that feels like what this crucible is all about. Also, that you talked about this press, this what we talked about last time, the narrow gate. All of this stuff can't get through the narrow gate, but the narrow gate is the mark. And we got to get rid of all of this other stuff that bloats us and pains us and angers us in order to be able to get through the narrow gate. And so, again, I apologize in advance, but that's just what I was feeling.
I see that, and I see every bit of what you're saying. It resonates deeply. And please understand this. There's one thing in this chapter that we missed, in these verses that we missed. Who blasphemed? Blasphemy is disconnection from the power source, simply put. Of course, it's more complicated, but simply put, it is disconnection from the power source. Who disconnected from the power source? What am I saying? The disconnection from the source of power is the disconnection from life. It is not a physical disconnect. It is a mental disconnect. It is an emotional disconnect. And when there is an emotional disconnect, I can put you in a pot of boiling oil and go to sleep at night. When there is a mental disconnect, I can chase you down and shoot you like a dog. I can drag you until your body is torn apart. That is an emotional disconnect. That's blasphemy. A mental disconnect is when I create policies to justify my emotional disconnect. And now that mental disconnect has people thinking that it's okay no matter what they do. And that is the reason a white kid can walk through the streets with a high-powered weapon, an AR-15, kill 2 people, wound 1, and go free, and end up in South Carolina going to Mauritius to eat barbecue with the state attorney general. However, 9-year-old, 14-year-old in Cleveland with a toy gun was killed within 4 seconds. The police get out of the car. That is a mental disconnect. The only one you are attached to mentally and emotionally is yourself. And anything that's not you is fair game. So how do we reconnect those who are disconnected mentally and emotionally? How do we do that? They are not spiritually disconnected. If you are spiritually disconnected, you're dead. You can't live in this body and be spiritually disconnected. You're emotionally and mentally disconnected. The way you do that is to create a desire in the mindset, in the hearts of those who have this disconnect. And that desire that's created is a desire to do the righteous thing. Because the right thing is relative, the righteous thing. And to do the righteous thing, having that desire, what do? You seek the source of righteousness, and you ask, will you teach us? Will you share what you are experiencing with us? And the response when you began to share is, I didn't know that. Oh, my God. Where have I been? You have been in your world of mental and emotional disconnect. Now, you are beginning to feel the unction of your soul. And the unction of your soul is touching your emotions. And now you're trying to understand, what am I experiencing? What you are experiencing is a rebirth. You are experiencing what happens at beginning. You are experiencing what it means to be Elohim in the flesh, what it means to be human. The reason you are searching so diligently is because you want to know who you were created to be, and you understand without knowing in your mind, but your soul knows what the source of life is, and you call on that source of life, not just to sustain you, but to deliver you. And the deliverance is from the doctrine. It is no coincidence that connections are with Christianity, because Christianity is what brought this earth to the place of where it is. And until we engage with the ones who created the concept of disengagement, then we will never, ever bring balance to this earth. When we engage, that is when we begin to see balance, because just like what we are saying goes into the macro, the things that we teach and the things that they embrace goes into the macro. And when it gets into the macro, it begins to touch the consciousness of the Caucasian who created this concept. And that concept begins to deteriorate, and the earth begins to breathe again. Life begins to be restored. That is who we are. We cannot remain in a blasphemous state and expect life to change in this earth for humanity. Thank you. I feel it.
Is there? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pastor.
We are in a critical state now. We're going to die as mere men? Or are we going to live as the Prince of Men? Are we going to live as Elohim, or are we going to die and remain animals until the universe starts over again? Our attitudes has to be renewed. Our emotions cannot be all over the place. Our emotions cannot be, I embrace this today and I don't tomorrow. Our emotional attachment cannot be anger toward the source of the destruction. Our emotional attachment cannot speak the words or become the actions of the ones who created this damnable doctrine. Our attitude, our emotions must always be loving kindness, must always be spiritual. You don't have to trust anyone. All you need to trust is the truth. You trust the truth, and nothing can overcome that. You hitch your wagon to truth, and it will take you in places unknown and places that are undesirable. But it does not change truth. It changes the places. And here we are on the brink of destruction. Tornadoes in December, while snow is coming from the same storm in other parts of the country. Here we are. Every time there is one variant almost conquered or controlled, another one pops up that's more deadly. This is going to happen until we are destroyed or until we decide to live. And the we of whom I speak are not the whole people of this world. I'm talking about you on this phone. It will continue until we make a decision. The Creator has shown us that change is possible. Change is a reality. When those jurors in Georgia convicted those men for killing Arbery, that was a message to us. This has never happened before. We've always gotten a Dred Scott decision. But this time, the decision was different. The question is, are we going to recognize the message the sign of the times and build on it, or are we going to be destructive because we want what we want the way that we want it, as opposed to traveling the journey that Jesus traveled? When Jesus was called upon by the centurion, the one who was killing his people, when he was called upon because the daughter was dying, Jesus did not say, "You killing my people." Jesus did not say, "I can't help you because you do things that are distasteful." Jesus did not say, "You don't believe in what I believe in." Jesus did not say, "You're not following my teachings." All Jesus said is okay. So where is our okay? Where is our okay? We are so caught up in our selfish vision of what ought to be and what has been, until we cannot look at what has been and understand that what has been is the destruction that we are here to correct. And if I am to rebuild a house that's been blown over, I have to remove the foundation. But I cannot rebuild it if I don't go to the place where it stood in the first place. This whole idea about democracy, for years, we have been saying, without understanding it, that it is the enslaved people who will bring democracy to this nation. It has never experienced democracy. It cannot happen until the force system is torn down. It doesn't bother me that the Capitol was infiltrated. It doesn't bother me that they did not send National Guard. It doesn't bother me that they didn't kill them all. No. What bothers me is that we see it as a political event as opposed to a spiritual reality of change. Those people who went into that Capitol, those people who have fought to destroy us, are the ones we need to sit face to face with and ask them, when you see me, what do you see? And without regard to what they say, respond in a righteous way. Righteousness, truth, loving kindness, those are our mantras. That's the way we live. That's where we exist and have our being. The words we speak hurt sometimes, but it needs to hurt. Because if it doesn't hurt, it's not cut away from you. There are things that we must do that is contrary to what we've been taught, because they are designed to bring into this earth realm a type of righteousness that it has never seen. And it will not happen without that seed of that masculinity and that womb of that femininity, understanding that it is one and cannot exist without the other. The very womb of life must be seen as the essence of loving kindness, because without it, without that womb, is not birth. So seed and womb are hand and glove, and righteousness frees mankind from unrighteousness. Righteousness, forgiveness, delivers from missing the mark and making excuses and creating a truth that is really a lie. That's what righteousness does. I think I'm done. Ron.
Pastor, I don't have anything else unless someone else does. Barbara, Audrey, Kathy, anyone? Questions, comments, anybody?
I'm experiencing right now.
Powerful.
Any question that you got, please raise it. Or any question you have, please raise it. Any statement, make it. We are
Just
on
that the
place
lesson has been.
Go ahead, dear.
Just that the lesson has been totally powerful all the way through. How we can take one or two verses, Ron, and because of the direction of our intent, the truth of it is expanded well beyond anything that I could even have thought. So thank you.
Yeah. And the only thing I guess thought come to my mind when you said it is the illusion of the physical world, because that is what I think has us bogged down. The things we see and that touch your emotions and your feelings. And can you say that again, or how do we work on that? Because that's one of the things that I see is probably my weakness, or one of them anyway. And while we're talking about it, we might as well, take a look at it, I guess, a little deeper.
We have to, Ron. We have to. When the scripture says that Jesus cast out demons, no. Demons are not entities. Demons are thoughts. Adversarial thoughts. What does it mean to cast them out? He purified the thoughts. What happens is when you are emotionally and mentally disconnected from the source, you lose your mind. What does that mean? If your soul is not speaking to your mind, you have lost your mind. You don't know what it is. You don't even know where your mind is. Your mind is all over the place. This Sunday, he got up early Sunday morning. And next Sunday, we need to be in the street marching. And the next Sunday is communion. Communion with what and for what? You've lost your mind. But when your soul speaks to your mind, you understand that when Jesus had communion, he was saying, when you start this journey of truth, you don't need this anymore, because this is ending the rituals. This is ending the wilderness experience. If you are still in the wilderness, then do this as a reminder of how to come out of the wilderness. And please understand, even though you are in the midst of that wilderness, you don't have to stay there. The way that I am teaching you, that's what brings you out of the wilderness. So when you're out, you don't need to do this communion thing. Are you with me?
Yes.
Would you pause it just a moment, please? Would you pause the recording for a moment, please?
Yes, I will.
Go ahead.
I have one. How soon will the tape be up so that you can actually listen to this again? For me, I need it's used so much, and we're so blessed.
Janice, if you're not on, or Sheldon, if you're on, would you respond to that? I'll make contact with Janice and Sheldon today and ask them to upload it immediately, okay?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? I'm telling you, whatever your questions are, raise them. I know where I am.
I have a question, Pastor. So when we're feeling the impact of what's happening in the universe, because, well, when we feel the impact that we feel in with what's happening in the universe, instead of saying, I want the feeling, like the anxiety, instead of saying I want it to leave, you're saying to embrace what's happening? Is that one of the things that we're talking about as well?
Yes, let me help you here. We are not experiencing the impact of the universe unless we are experiencing righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
The universe does not create anxiety. We do. This earth consciousness does. We brought fear into being. So, when we are experiencing the adversities of this consciousness, yes, we embrace it. Why do we embrace it? It is no different than looking at that adversity as being a grenade. And that grenade, you must contain it so it doesn't explode and hurt anyone. You cover it so when it explodes, it stays where it is. The fragments don't travel to others. When we are experiencing adversarial thoughts, when our feelings of anxiety are there, we need to contain them by meditating. We need to contain them by understanding this is not an arrow being shot at you. This is a message being sent to you. And the thing that's causing the anxiety is there so you can understand that it needs to be embraced by you. And when you bring balance to it, when you infuse your energy into it, the source of that anxiety experiences what you have done. However, if you allow that anxiety, that fear, those adversarial thoughts and feelings to consume you, it is a grenade exploding, and everything around you changes. And it begins to experience what you are experiencing as opposed to experiencing the power of the energy that you are. Does that help you, Evelyn?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm seeing
Pastor,
so much. Yes.
Pastor, based on what you said this morning, which it has been a lot, and I know we're all absorbing it and taking it in and digesting it, but based on how you just answered Evelyn's question, you are describing what we taught or what was said a couple of weeks ago about how to create space inside of yourself to allow things to change, are you not?
Yes. You have to have that space inside yourself to transform that anxiety. If you don't, another way of putting it is this. If you don't, that anxiety will bounce off you and splinter, and it will still go towards other people. You're increasing it in the earth. If you embrace it so it cannot go beyond you, you are imparting enlightenment into the earth. Does that help you, Kat?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, Pastor, this is Rainey. I have a question. So when you talk about embracing that anxiety, because you and I have been talking about some stuff I'm anxious about, without being specific about what I'm talking about, could you talk about what it means to embrace it as opposed to spin in it or?
Yes. What I mean by embrace it in regards to all of this is this. When those anxieties are something that you have made every attempt to embrace, and you don't know how to embrace it, you talk to someone else and let them help you embrace it. For example, that I have been diagnosed with vestibular injury, which means that it's affecting my equilibrium, it's affecting my it gives me headaches, and it affects I stumble for words at times. So how do I embrace that? I've tried to embrace it and heal this body with it, but that's not it. I have to start treatment the 29th. And that treatment that I have to begin is my embracing it and finding help for it at a source that can give me the help that I need, with the understanding that all the techniques, all the medicine, everything that's in this earth that brings deliverance to us, be it physical or otherwise, it had its origin with the African. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some medications that are there simply to keep you on medication. That is the distinction we have to deal with individually. However, embracing does not all the time mean that you are going to be able to contain it, especially when it's your body, because there are so many things in this earth that are adverse to the body itself. And we, as our animalistic thought people in this earth, have brought into existence those things to harm the body for greed, for gain. So there are different methods of embracing. I hope I'm helping you, Rainier.
Yeah, that does help me. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
And thank you for sharing with us what you're going through as well.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
So, Pastor, when you say embrace it, does that mean like just saying, okay, if I have to take meds for this, is that part of just accepting it and embracing it? Because, you know, you and I have been talking about some things that I've been anxious about as well. I'm sorry?
That's it. That's it, baby. It's not a part of it. That's it. That's what embracing is. See, what happens is with the religion, we fragment things. What I mean by that is this. Is this a part of embracing? No, that is embracing. Or I lay my religion down, or I'm almost saved, and don't even know what salvation is, or I am a part of this church and you're part of that church, or I am a part of this denomination and you're a part of that one, or I am a part of this religion and you're part of the other religion, thus fragmenting. The fragmentation of the human thought was never to be. The unicity of the human thought was always what was intended. And the unicity of thought does not mean that we are thinking the same thing all the time. What it does mean is that we are thinking, we are processing based upon love and kindness, based upon wisdom and understanding. That's the unicity of our thoughts. Any questions about that, or at least let me know you understand what I'm saying about it?
So, Pastor, is that kind of
Understanding.
like? Oh, I have another question. Is that kind of like, when you're what we're seeing with not trusting scientists or doctors and trusting narrow sources of information because it builds up what we think or believe. That not embracing part. Yes.
Let me show you something about that. It's very important. And that question is probably one of the most important of all day. Why? Because this question that was raised shows us how fragmentation took place and shows us how a doctrine that is foreign to the scriptures was brought into existence. You will not find an anti-vaxxer who will tell you and be telling the truth that this anti-vaccination started with the Africans. This distrust of science, this death wish, this discussion of how the Creator has given us opportunity. Would you please not mute your phone? Would you make sure your phones are muted? The Creator has given us this opportunity to confront pestilence in the land. And what the Creator is showing us is the same one who brought the doctrine of Christianity into this earth. That same doctrine is the doctrine that's driving the anti-vaxxers. It's the same doctrine that's driving QAnon. It's the same doctrine that's driving white supremacy. And it all emanated with Trump. And we know that he was brought here to expose everything. Think about it. What kind of mindset do you have when you travel to Dallas in November waiting for JFK to show up, when you didn't even like JFK, and you still in Dallas, some of them going broke, QAnon, waiting for him to show up? What kind of mindset is that? Totally disconnect mentally. That's losing your mind. We think the person on the street talking out of their head losing them. No. Losing your mind is that example. Embracing whatever you are told. And let me show you when you lose your mind, this is what happens. The one who caused you to lose your mind and put you on a road to injury, sickness, death, or prolonged illness, that same one who did that has prevented it from happening to him. But yet, you follow that doctrine, even though it's killing you and those around you. A threat to your survival. And everyone at the head, at the top, the ones in authority who is pushing it, every single one of them, whether it's Marjorie Greene or Ted Cruz, they all have received the vaccination. And they are not in Dallas looking for JFK. I hope that helps. Or speaks to the question anyway, does it?
Yes, it does.
Any other questions? I think someone else is about to ask a question. Or make a statement. If there are no more questions or comments, then we'll see each other tomorrow on the phone and on Zoom. created to be. You're welcome.
Good night, everybody. Good day. Have a good day, rather.
Thank you so much.
Have
All
a
right,
good day.
thanks, y'all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.